In September 1983, The Glove released their only album, Blue Sunshine.
The Glove got sort of mixed reviews. People to this day either love it or hate it. But by that point, you know, the Banshees were suffering their first backlash. So it kind of fell in the midst of that. So it was seen as, you know, self-indulgent and you know, a waste of time. And, but we were quite open about it. We just said yes. It's totally self-indulgent. That is the whole point of it.
Smith had spent much of 1983 splitting his time between a pop project with The Cure and working with the Banshees. Towards the end of the year, his relationship with the Banshees started to become strained.
By the time he was in the band for the second time, I really was that elemental on his shoulder. I was trying to convince him to leave The Cure behind and to join the Banshees full-time. Selfish reasons, of course, because, you know, number one, he was my friend, and number two, I wanted the Banshees to get some stability. And I think, you know, I was definitely trying to squeeze Lowell out of the picture. I make no bones about that. But, you know, I respected his wishes, and that, you know, and kind of in the back of my mind, I knew he would never kind of give up The Cure because he had too much of a personal vision to be subsumed into another band, particularly with such a strong front person as Susie.
Even though, you know, he's been very conscientious and very determined and very neurotically needy of having the band of The Cure, I think for me it's always just been Robert Smith and this loose band of people that throw Cure-type shapes. You know, there's a certain way that a Cure member must look and hold his instrument, and it gives the illusion for Robert, who seems to need it, that he's in a band. That kind of helps keep him together. But for me, it's always been, you know, from the very, very early days, really, Robert Smith. You know, to the extent on something like The Top, you get the feeling that he did it all. It was all him. You know, this great kind of multi-instrumentalist kind of brilliance that was the true kind of essence of this thing he calls The Cure, but for me is Smith.
I never used to be able to put any feelings of optimism or hope or anything into songs. It was always complete despair, even though my actual personality was always quite balanced, or as balanced as it is, you know. But now, what The Cure do tends to reflect like a whole, more than just one particular piece of. It's more like a group mentality. Yeah, Let's Go to Bed was probably the only contrived record we ever made, and ever will make, because it was designed to completely break the mould of what The Cure had become, which I thought was very static and almost stagnant.
Well, Robert Smith is The Cure. That's definitely true, and you know, you couldn't imagine The Cure without Robert Smith, but obviously there has been The Cure without any other band member you can think of, because, you know, apart from The Fall, he's probably had more line-up changes of any band in history. But I think the key to a successful Cure line-up was always whether it was people who were prepared to follow Robert Smith where he wanted to go. He's got a really, as far as I can tell anyway, got a really committed approach to making a record that, you know, he demands full-on commitment from everybody, and if he's going to make a sort of bleak, depressing record, then, you know, he wants everybody to be having a bleak, depressing time. If he's making an upbeat pop record, then, you know, he wants everybody to be having an upbeat pop time. So there have been, you know, certain members of The Cure that have been really important to that sound. I mean, see, Lowell Tolhurst, who fell out very badly with Rob Smith eventually and was kicked out of the band, was certainly key to, you know, their early stuff, and, you know, had a big impact on the band musically, and in terms of certainly their spirit. And it went fairly hideously wrong, obviously, in the long run. But you can't underestimate the impact of all the bit players, and the fact that they conquered America is not just down to the fact that Robert Smith wrote brilliant songs. It's because he went out there with a band who could, you know, rock out with the best of them. Because you can't appear in front of 65,000 people, you know, in some barn of a stadium that's used to hold in baseball games, unless your band can rock.
I think what always struck me about Robert Smith, and certainly when I first met him, you get the impression it's like with his marriage, his relationship with Mary. He's in something for the duration. And I think that's something that struck me. I mean, he along with a lot of other people as well, but it's a career, it's longevity.
I think the key to Robert Smith's appeal as a fan is that you're never quite sure where you are with him. He is enigmatic in the very best sense of the word. You know, if you just listen to his records, you'd think he was some sort of lovelorn poet up in his attic, you know, tearing his hair out in despair. But then you read his interviews and you find out that he actually spends a lot of the time, you know, like he's I don't know, a footballer. Perhaps he seems to spend all his time, you know, playing football, getting drunk, and having a good time. So it's that kind of unique thing that he can be, you know, sort of one of the lads, and he can be this kind of enigmatic poet figure, which makes him really intriguing as a person.
I think one of the things that made us sort of fast friends was his sense of humour. He's got a really good sense of humour, and that's not something that comes out too often in the work that he does, and there's no reason why it should. But you know, the public face of somebody isn't always what they're really like. So yeah, I think that's key to a lot of creative work, is understanding the sense of humour and the jokes that you can throw into, you know, just sort of soften the blows of all the other stuff that you're trying to deal with.
We don't sing really about issues that are socially relevant, particularly, so that they're not placed in England. There's a lot of, if you get caught up in singing about social or political issues in England, it tends to alienate a lot of people because they don't understand what he's on. I mean, I don't understand British politics.
The thing about Robert Smith's voice is that on the surface, it's rubbish. If he turned up with a Pop Idol audition, they'd kick him out within, you know, 10 seconds and just tell him he can't sing. And I suppose technically they might be right, but when it comes to conveying emotion and a range of emotion, then obviously he'll knock any, you know, winner of American Idol, you know, into next week, because it's really quirky, which is really good, especially in an era when most singers were fairly bland, production line, you know, Stock Aitken Waterman type thing. So to hear somebody essentially squawking like some kind of mad bird over a record was, you know, was really refreshing. But he's got a lot of range as well, so he can do kind of dark and doomy, and he can do up and poppy, and be equally convincing on both. And a song like something like Just Like Heaven, for example, if that was sung perfectly, I don't think it would be as good a record as it is. It would just lose something. It would feel like more of a cliche pop record. But in his hands, I think the fact that, you know, he's a bit sloppy with it makes it just, you know, that's the missing ingredient that makes it just a brilliant record.
I think Robert's got a very distinctive voice. You know, it's him immediately. And somehow it always seems as though it's a very emotive voice. There again, it's, you know, it's a kind of people either love it or they don't, which is usually a sign of something that's dead good, in my opinion, or at least unique.
I love the way it can just there's a passion in every note, everything he does, the way he says words, how he phrases, you know, the thing that struck me most originally was the first thing. You know, sometimes it might be a riff, and in the case of Robert Smith, it was the voice that it is vulnerable. It's got so many different emotions. It can sound paranoid sometimes, sound manic. But you know, he pulls off so many different things with the voice. It's his best instrument.
Apart